Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Saints Insider Postgame Show. I'm Zach Ewing here live from the Caesars Superdome floor, where the New Orleans Saints have fallen to the Los Angeles Rams 21-14 today in Week 13. A rare late afternoon game for the Saints and a pretty sleepy one, if we're being honest, most of the way. Saints led this game 6-0 at halftime, but really couldn't stop the Rams in the second half. Rams scored touchdowns on 3 of their first 4 drives after halftime, take a 21-14 lead. The Saints stopped inside the Rams' 10-yard line with about a minute to play, and that was all she wrote. Rams able to run the clock out, and they win 21-14 and drop the Saints to 4-8, give interim coach Rizzy his first loss, and basically make it so that this last month of the season is not going to mean a whole lot for the Saints. We'll talk a little bit about that. Mathematically still alive with the Falcons losing their game today, but certainly not a very good chance for the Saints to make any sort of postseason run after this one. Had they won, and we talked about this all week, had they won, you're talking about a different story. They would have passed the Rams in the wild card race. They would have gotten a step closer in there and only been, at this point, 1 game behind the Falcons. Now, the Falcons on the tiebreaker, but you could have kind of dared to dream had the Saints won this one. And for a while, it looked like they were going to figure it out. But ultimately, the Rams win it 21-14. We are taking your comments and questions live here on the Saints Insider Postgame Show. It's brought to you by Tulane Doctors. And we got a lot to talk about. We'll have Luke Johnson, Matt Paris, Jeff Duncan, and Rod Walker joining us from the Saints locker room later. We'll also be joined here shortly by Jim Derry, our Datitude podcast host. And we'll get to that and more of your comments and questions after we take our break and this message from Tulane Doctors.
At Tulane Doctors, we know your health can't wait.
So we made booking appointments easier than ever.
Just dial 988-5000 to book with any physician, any specialty.
Whether at East Jefferson General Hospital or one of our other locations.
Because your health is our top priority.
And because navigating healthcare should be simple,
personal,
accessible.
When you see the shield, you'll know the future of medicine is here.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
All right, welcome back to the Saints Insider Postgame Show. We are brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Now at East Jefferson General Hospital, Tulane Doctors are bringing academic medicine to more patients in new communities. Look for the shield to know the future of medicine is here. Call 504-988-5000 to schedule with any Tulane doctor or visit TulaneDoctors.com. Joined now by Jim Derry. He's host of the Datitude podcast, a spinoff of the Times-Picayune Advocate, NOLA.com, all of that, all under the same umbrella. And Jim, the Darren Rizzy effect did not last through the bye, really. And the Saints had the lead in this game that really controlled the first half and should have been up by more, and that came back to hurt them.
You and I talked about it at halftime when we said that if the Saints didn't win this game, we were going to point back to all the missed opportunities they had in the first half. You can't kick field goals when you should be scoring touchdowns. You can't leave all those points on the board. And really, I mean, even the Saints they had a chance. They should have been up probably 17-0 or somewhere along those lines, or at least 17-3. Rams left some points out there too. But, when you have the ball in the first quarter, 13 minutes and 58 seconds to 102, and you're only winning 3-0, that says a lot about the ineffectiveness and about how it's just proof that how things need to change. You can't go forward with that. Winning teams don't do that. And so that, to me, that's just a microcosm of what where this franchise is right now and what needs to change.
Yeah, and you say that, and the Saints did leave some points on the board. They had a touchdown, little screen pass to Alvin Kamara that was called back on an ineligible man downfield, which was the right call. And then there was kind of a softer call, one I didn't like as well, on Trevor Penning, where he kind of like was tripped and fell into a defender, and they gave him, and that really pushed the Saints out of any chance of getting the touchdown. And then they missed the field goal, of course. So but there was also, the Saints caught a break, and that Derek Carr's arm had barely started moving forward before he's hit on their first drive. It could have been a scoop and score for Braden Fisk and the Rams. Instead, they get the ball back and they get a field goal there. You mentioned the Rams left some points on the board. So I just think it was a game, even in the second half, where the Saints offense had to work so hard for everything. There was no time in the pocket for Derek Carr. I think they missed Eric McCoy, who was inactive with his groin injury.
There's no question. That's true.
No time for him to wait for things to go downfield. The last play of the game, the 4th and 3, we'll talk about. He probably held onto the ball too long, but it was a tough day for the offense. Their weapons, obviously missing Olave and Shaheed, I think that hurt them today. And then missing some of those linemen. It just everything was so difficult.
When you play touch football with your friends back in the day, and you'd get like 4 Mississippi to throw the ball. Well, Derek Carr was getting 1 Mississippi. You couldn't even get the miss out after the 2 before he was getting hit. And so you can't have 1 Mississippi, 2 blam. That is not going to add up to success. And you and I were joking at one point, I think, that Carr had like 15 completions, but only had 104 passing yards at the time. Yeah. I don't know what he finished with, but, that is just proof positive of when you have no time, you've got to dump off the ball. And fans get frustrated with a quarterback when you're talking about dinking and dunking and hitting the check down guy, and he gets called check down Carr and all this stuff. But there's nothing else he could do. He had no time to throw the ball. So I actually thought he played fairly well for the little bit of time that he had. But Saints they don't have weapons right now. And it's not just the lines. You look at, we talked about this before, but your number 1 and your number 2 receivers are gone, and your best receiver is MVS. I mean, the guys, Austin, I don't know how many catches did Keith Austin have? I don't know, 6?
Kevin Austin.
Oh, Kevin Austin, sorry. Kevin Austin.
He's anonymous, yeah.
Exactly. And Dante Pettis had to make a big play. And how many catches do guys like that have? Juwan Johnson dropped a couple of passes that could have made a difference. So, look, you're doing what you can do. You just don't have the personnel, and it won't be long now before we start talking about all the different changes. We've kind of already started talking about it on Datitude a little bit because I've been a 0.0% chance guy for quite a few weeks now, and this just kind of cemented it. And I don't, I'm not gloating in any way. I would have loved to see them win tonight and have fun with it and let the fans have hope for a little bit longer, but today was just kind of proof of where this team is right now and all the things that need to be done.
I mean, even as a guy who said 0.0, had they won today, you combine that with the Falcons' loss. The Bucs are tied with the Panthers right now. We don't know how that'll turn out. Like, you'd have to bump that up.
I would have had fun still saying 0.0 tomorrow on Datitude because I would have definitely got pushback. I've been getting pushback anyway, so I would have got plenty of pushback, and I would have had fun with it tomorrow. But I would rather have fun with it. I'd rather them be 5-7 or whatever it is instead of 4-8, but it just wasn't meant to be. And I got to be honest, and when they went to the half where it was, I just didn't feel like there was much of a chance for this team to win, even though they were winning at halftime, 6-0 or whatever it was. I figured the Rams would come out and have a better game plan in the second half, and they did. Sean McVay's that good of a coach. You know they were going to change things. They did.
Yeah, and this was the one the Saints needed. And kind of in regard to what we were talking about, a comment here from Elijah Gray who says, Clinton Kubiak needs to stop relying on Taysom Hill so much, get other people involved. Well, okay, look, for one, we talked about how few weapons they have. Taysom's one of the few weapons him and Alvin Kamara, they get a lot of touches because they're the weapons you have. Right. Well, now, guess what? Taysom Hill, a knee injury, got carted off the field in the fourth quarter. I think, number one, that affected the end of that game. I think on 3rd and 4 and then 4th and 3 on those last 2 plays, if you have Taysom Hill, he probably gets a touch on one of those 2 plays if he's in the game.
Well, Carr ran for a first down right after he went out.
Right.
It ran out to the right and got him a first down. But I agree with you. It completely – now the inner half of the Rams defense, both on the inside, the 2 tackles and the inside linebackers are both squaring on Kamara. And then they're just going to watch Kamara. If somebody else beats him, somebody else beats him. But that's where you lose it because at least when Taysom's in the game, you can't solely focus on Alvin Kamara. And, AK was kind of a mixed bag. We had, our headline for Friday was we thought this was going to be a Kamara game, and it was to some extent. But I don't think he was as effective as I thought he would be. And I think it's partly because Taysom did pick some things up in the second half, but I thought he was not nearly as effective as the Saints needed him to be.
Yeah.
Until towards the end there when he got hurt.
Kamara did finish with 112 yards rushing on 23 carries. He was productive. He did have several 9, 10, 11, 12-yard gains, especially in the first half. Moving over to the defensive side of things, you mentioned it, 6-0 at halftime, and it was weird because even though they pitch a shutout in the first half, and by the way, that was the first time Sean McVay's offense in LA has been shut out in the first half since the Super Bowl against the Patriots. And it's the only time in the regular season it's ever happened. So you got to give the Saints defense some credit there, but I actually felt like they played good but not great in that first half. The Rams didn't really execute. They had some trouble. Matthew Stafford didn't look like he was quite on his game. They had a couple of run fits that didn't quite work out, and they came out in the second half and we're just a different team. It was just methodical, 3 touchdown drives out of their first 4, kind of very balanced offense, showed off their weapons. That's what we expected from this.
Well, and I talked about the time of possession in the first quarter, which was, again, 13:58 for the Saints, 1 minute and 2 seconds for Tampa Bay. But after that first quarter, for the second and third quarters combined, the Rams outgained the Saints 268 yards to 90. And also basically 22 minutes to 8 in time of possession. So it was completely turned around. And on defense, you've got to find a way to get teams off the field. You can't allow 21 points and a half to anyone. So as good as you did in the first half, putting up a goose egg doesn't mean much if you give up 21 points in the second half. So, and that's look, especially when your team's only scored 6 in the first half, it's not going to be a winning formula.
Second straight game, the Saints failed to force a turnover as well, and definitely something that could have changed this game. They didn't turn the ball over either. It's just kind of a weird game, very methodical on both sides. Not that many drives in this game.
Also, another thing that was kind of disappointing to me is, look, I predicted the Saints to lose this game, so it wasn't a surprise to me. But what I did find sort of surprising is you had a bye week, and you're on sort of a roll, and I didn't feel like the Saints came out with a lot of inspiration today. You would think all this talk about Rizzy and how he's got this team fired up, and I just think that kind of wore off. And even though I know we said I wrote on my iPad that officially the Riz effect ended in the third quarter after they went 3 and out, and it was 7-6, and they ended up scoring again after that. But I just don't think that there was any Rizzy effect today at all. Now I'm not blaming a lot on Rizzy because he's doing the best with what he has, but at the same time, I just expecting this team, and that's why I thought it would be a high-scoring game. I thought both offenses would play better because the Rams have a horrendous run defense. They just do. And so that's why Kamara only rushing for 90 yards or whatever, 100 yards or right around there.
112. Yeah.
112. Okay, so I was a little off. But, I just thought it was going to be a big Kamara day, and it was just a so-so Kamara day. And it was frankly disappointing just the way that they came out and just not enough. They weren't fired up enough for me.
I'll say 2 things to that. Number one, you cannot always just win games with emotion and energy, and that's why we talk about this interim coach bump, and it does wear off. You have to have something else there besides that. And that's not Darren Rizzy's fault. That's just the reality of the situation. Right. The other thing I'll say is that I actually kind of like the Saints' game plan early. I mean, they knew they were going to have trouble holding this Rams offense down, and so what do? You try to go on these long drives, soak up clock. They were able to do that. The problem is, and Barry says it right here, offense loses the game in the first quarter, 13-plus minutes, and you score 3 points, game over. Like, that's the problem. You have to make that stuff pay off. Now, imagine the Saints had a 10-0 or 14-0 lead after the first quarter in that first play, the second quarter.
A big difference.
It's a completely different game. Now the Rams are in chase mode. Now you can play defense a little bit differently. You can play offense a little bit differently. That changes the game.
Well, not only that, the Rams are not going to just run Kyron Williams right, run Kyron Williams left, run Kyron Williams up the middle, and that's what they were doing. That was the game plan for them coming out in the second half, and it worked because they drove right down the field and scored a touchdown. Because, as you say, if it's 17-0 or even maybe 14-0, maybe they're not going to change it as much, but they're not just going to cram it down your throat when they're trailing by a couple touchdowns or more, whereas they don't have anything to worry about when you're only down by 6. And that's how they kind of played the end of the half, knowing that they would get the ball first in the second half. And they used it to their advantage. They took a lead, and they never trailed again. Now, the Saints tied it up with the touchdown and 2-point conversion at 14. But, I mean, I got to be honest, I don't think at any point in the second half did I feel like the Saints were really going to win this game, even when they tied it up.
Saints tied it up, and then another key that we haven't talked about yet. Jordan Whittington returned the ensuing kickoff 43 yards, 44 yards, I think, to the 43-yard line. Sets the Rams up with great field position. I think it took them 6 plays, I think it was like 4 plays, and they scored the touchdown, 56 yards in 4 plays, and retake the lead. And so it's just like any momentum you had from that touchdown, 2-point conversion is gone on the kickoff return. All of a sudden, 2 plays later, the Rams are inside the 40, and you're going, well, even if we stop them, the Rams probably getting a field goal here, and they're back on top with just a few minutes to go in the game. And so it's just difficult to maintain your momentum in that sort of a situation. Let's talk about the situation at the end of the game where the Saints, you mentioned the Derek Carr scramble. He gets 9 yards, gave the Saints a first down at the Rams 16-yard line. 16-yard line. There was 1 play left before the 2-minute warning. It was a 3-yard Alvin Kamara run. I thought that was the right move. Run the ball, let the clock tick down to the 2-minute warning, because ideally you want to score a touchdown and not leave the Rams as little time as possible. So I thought that was the right move. But after the 2-minute warning, that's where I think some second guessing may be in order.
Yeah, 3-yard Kamara run, and then so it's 3rd and 4. And then a 1-yard Kamara run. Now, I get that you're for sure you're going for it on 4th down, but they know, too, that you're going for it on 4th down. It's no secret that you're going for it on 4th down. And we've become so accustomed to teams liking to run the ball on 3rd down. It's almost become – you got to think of it in reverse. You almost got to think of, well, what would you do on 2nd down if you were definitely going to punt? If you were on your own side of the field and you were going to punt in a situation. So – I don't think they were thinking of it like that. They just went into automatic mode, and I thought there was no imagination whatsoever. I get Kamara's your best player. We talked about the Rams being the 30th ranked run defense. I know what you were trying to accomplish, but the Saints weren't doing anything inside the tackles running the football for most of the afternoon. Most of Kamara's runs were starting up the middle and then kind of cutting it back outside around the tackle, and I just thought that there was no imagination there, and you get 1 yard, and now you're forced. I would have rather seen the 4th down play that didn't work. I would have rather seen them run that on 3rd down and try something different. And so I just thought the Rams were ready for the run. You only get 1 yard out of it. Now you're forced to do something. The Rams had it covered very well. That's what they do well. They rush the passer well, and they stop the short to medium pass well, and they stopped it there. So I'd rather do it when they're not sure what they're going to get, and the Saints didn't do that. They ran it when the Rams knew what they were going to get.
Yeah, and you said the right word. Like, you just needed a little more creativity, I think. And that once you get to 3rd and 4, I think you play it right down to 3rd and 4 because you're not in a hurry there.
Yeah, I'm okay
running the ball
right.
is fine. Get yourself in a short yardage situation. Force the Rams to think about using their timeouts, or you're going to give them back the ball with like a minute or less left.
And they called timeout, so they did call timeout. Use the timeout after the 2nd down play.
That's the right
3rd down play
after the 3rd down play. But on the 3rd down play or the 4th down play, I would have liked to see. Now, I will say this: without Taysom Hill, things become more difficult. And without Eric McCoy, your playbook is condensed there, and so I will give them half an excuse on that. But I would have liked to see Carr rolling out. I would have liked to see a little more motion, maybe a play action on that 3rd down, something to give the Rams some pause, some misdirection. And then even if you complete a short pass and pick up 4 or 5 yards, you have the 1st and goal, and now you can go to work.
McCarr had already shown that he can do it with his feet. So, and the Rams weren't expecting that. So I absolutely agree. On 3rd down, you do some kind of rollout for Carr, and you give him the option. If he sees somebody, great, because the chances are you're going to have somebody open there because they're not expecting that to be a pass there. And if you don't, I think you're going to do exactly what he did when he gained 9 yards after take someone out. I think and have a chance to get the 1st down with his feet and run it out of bounds. So, yeah, I just don't think there was enough imagination there. And this is what I'm talking about when I say that at times Clint Kubiak has looked like a genius and he comes in with these great game plans. And other times he looks like he's not really a rookie coordinator, but a sophomore coordinator, which a young coordinator, let's say, and why he might not be ready for the prime time. So, again, I'm not putting it all on anyone. I mean, it was kind of a team effort today, and the Saints, in the grand scheme of things, when it comes down to it, you and I talked about it. I think it comes down to, and I said this after week 2, I said it before week 2, but you can't play without Eric McCoy, Derek Carr. And if they have Eric McCoy today, I think it's a completely different game. I think the Saints win this game. And this offensive line is just a mess. And so you can look at all the things that they should have done, shoulda, woulda, coulda, and what plays they could have called. And but when you don't have the horses up front in the trenches, you're just not going to be able to win football games, and they weren't able to win today.
Yeah, Shane Lemieux filled in for Eric McCoy.
Okay.
It's hard to grade offensive line play without going back and looking at the film.
I thought Saldivari had a really. I don't know.
Nick Saldivari was starting for Lucas Patrick. Yeah, and he left with an injury in the third quarter. They bring in Landon Young to play left guard at that point. Trevor Penning had a rough day. He had the penalty in the first half. I think
Fuaga had the illegal downfield penalty.
Penning and Cesar Ruiz both. It seems like the Rams consistent pressure
when
off that
we
right
get
side.
this, when you like to run the PFF grades, and I think that's probably if I had to guess, and I don't know the answer to this, but I'd guess that's probably one of the most read things all week. And I would be willing to bet that when you get the grades back this week, the entire offensive line had. I don't think there's a single offensive lineman that had a really good day today. If I had to guess which one was the best one, I would probably say Fuaga. But really, when you I'm going to, 1 Mississippi, 2 Blam, you got to throw the ball. There's not much you can do with that, no matter who the quarterback is.
Yeah, it was a problem all the way around. Tampa Bay Buccaneers have just defeated the Carolina Panthers 26-23 in overtime, and so that allows us, Jim, to talk a little bit of big picture. The Saints are 4-8. The Saints now trail. Now, look, the Falcons and Bucs are tied for first place in this division at 6-6. It's not a good division again. It's. I don't know when the next time the NFC.
Where are all those people, by the way, who said Kirk Cousins is way better than Derek Carr? Where are all those people today?
The Falcons lose to the Chargers today. Cousins throws 4 interceptions, including a pick 6 that was the difference in a 17-13 game. So, mathematically, with 2 teams you're chasing just at 6-6, you could still catch them. But the Falcons hold any and all tiebreakers. Doesn't matter what happens, the Falcons will hold the tiebreaker over the Saints. They've already clinched a better division record than the Saints. They also, by the way, will hold the tiebreaker over the Bucs because they swept the season series. So the Falcons still have that advantage. The Saints also, at this point, would lose the tiebreaker to the Bucs. I'm not sure if they were to beat them in Week 18, if there was any way back. I think they would lose.
So what you're saying is that the Saints are 3 games back.
Yeah, they're essentially 3 games back with 5 to go.
That equals 0.
With only 1 head-to-head left. That's against Tampa Bay. Mathematically, there's some sort of a Lloyd Christmas chance in there. So you're telling me there's a chance, Mary Swanson. But it's not. It was I think ESPN had it at 3% this week, or the
before
Athletic had it at 3%. I saw 5% somewhere else. That was before the game. It's like 0.3% now. I mean, we're talking about it is at this point. You go see what you've got with some of the young players. Maybe you give Darren Rizzy a little more of an audition, but that's about all there is for the rest.
Yeah, and I said, look, before this game, I said, even if the Saints won out, before this game, if they won out and finished with 10 wins, it still wasn't 100% that they were going to make the playoff. It was a good chance they win, but I said, even if they went, let's say they lose 1 and they go 9-8, again, your chances are still slim. Now, had they won today and you could see a potential path to 9 wins, then you would say, okay, I wouldn't have said it. But one could make an argument for there is a path to 9 wins, and 9 wins may be good enough to win this division because maybe the Bucs and Falcons don't. One of them or both of them don't win 9 games. I don't know. We'll see. But again, you're talking about those chances are out the window now too because, again, you got to play Jaden Daniels in this place, and the Saints have been historically bad at stopping mobile quarterbacks. And then you got to go to Green Bay Christmas week and play, in my opinion, one of the top 2 or 3 teams, not just in the NFC, but in all of football, because I think that's how Green Bay's playing right now. So good luck with that.
It's a couple of tough ones. And, again, at 9-8, maybe there's some scenarios where it works out and you could afford to, if you find a way to split those Commanders and Packers games, maybe then you have a path. Well, now you got to win them both.
Right.
And you got to win in Tampa Bay. And you have to take care of business against the Giants and the Raiders, and you're going to need a bunch of help. So, yeah, I mean, we're talking about a infinitesimal possibility here. It's very,
That's
very
a word
small.
You don't get to use a lot.
That is, it's a good one.
It is a good. I like that.
Word of the day.
It's almost as good as penultimate.
Infinitesimal. So, look, what do we look forward to the last month of the year? I think
effort.
The Saints have an aging roster. A lot of these guys are not going to be back next year, but what do we want to see?
I mean, I know the fans are going to come out and say, and I got a feeling this is how it's going to go on tomorrow's show and maybe on your shows as well. By the way, shameless plug, Attitude live tomorrow morning, Monday morning at 11 a.m. on all of our NOLA.com social media channels. I will say this. I got a feeling that you're going to have I'm going to be nice and say in the corner underneath the patio, crawling out of the patio to the light fan saying, let's see Spencer Rattler again because this season's over and we want to lose anyway. And all that stuff's going to come. I'm telling you, that's going to come out of the woodwork tomorrow. They might already be saying it for all we know in the comment stream. But I want to see this team. I think rooting for your team to lose is always silly, no matter the case. And first of all, you're a liar if you're really rooting for your team to lose. No one can tell me they actually watch a game and root for their team to lose. I don't believe it. But second of all, I want to see effort. So you're asking me what do I want to see? I want to see the Brian Brizzes of the world take, and he's already kind of taken that next step.
Had a good game.
I really like, and I was wrong about this kid. I said last year I didn't like that pick. You and I were on the air together. I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it either. And he is really, to me, from year 1 to year 2, he may have been taken the biggest step from year 1 to year 2 than any other player. Alontae Taylor, I think, has taken a big step as well. But I think from game to game and consistency, Brian Brisset has taken a giant leap, and I love what I see from him. But not just the young players. I want to see effort from everyone. And to me, that's how you're going to figure out where the foundation of this team is. Because if you're not trying now, you ain't going to be trying later. Okay? And I think that's one thing Darren Rizzy's not going to let anyone. One thing I love about this guy is he's not going to let anyone not give maximum effort. Because if they don't give maximum effort, they're not going to be out there. So over the course of the next 5 weeks, that's what I'm going to be looking for. Who is trying their hardest, whether it's good enough to play or not, we'll find out. But go out there and play like you care.
Yeah. One note on Brisset, he's got to work on the run defense. I think that's
true.
A big point of that interior run gaps.
Which is kind of surprising because I really kind of thought it would be the other way around.
Right. His pass rush has been spectacular. He had a sack today, also a pressure that forced an incompletion, a quarterback hit. I think he's up to 6.5 sacks for the year.
He's done a really good job
leads the Saints. So you have something there. If he can just become an average run defender, you really have something there. He's just not there yet. All right, this is the Saints Insider Postgame Show. He's Jim Derry. We got the late game. We're going to go a little bit faster today, and we've got Luke Johnson, our Times-Picayune beat writer in the area. So, Jim, your final thoughts on this one and where we are going forward.
Look, and I know it's heartbreaking in a way to some people because they're the eternal optimists out there thought that the Saints really had a chance, and good. I'm glad they did, and I'm glad that that the longer you have hope, the better. Okay, and that just because I think one thing, or you will think one thing, or Luke thinks one thing, doesn't matter what we think. The fact is, as long as the Saints keep playing well, that's what you want to see from your team, and I think that this is a different team under Rizzy. In the grand scheme of things, this is a much more positive. Even though they lost today, it's been a month at home, and no one can tell me that you don't feel at least a little bit better about this team today than you felt a month ago when Dennis Allen was saying bye-bye to everybody. So, look, there are going to be good days and bad days, and we're going to have some meaningless days when it comes to football going forward, but enjoy it nonetheless. And we'll talk about it along the way, and we hope you stick with us.
All right, he's Jim Derry. You can catch him on the Datitude podcast at 11 a.m. every weekday except Tuesday going forward during football season. Catch him tomorrow, and we'll say our thanks to him, and he'll make the handoff here to Times-Picayune, NOLA.com beat writer Luke Johnson. All right.
It's going to be just me today, so Matt can get his story done.
Yeah, Matt's got deadline writing these 3 o'clock games. We don't like
they're
them.
not easy.
They're
not easy, especially when it's decided in the last minute.
Did Jeff bail on us too? Is it?
No, Dunk will come.
Oh,
I'm
there he is.
I'm going to double up for Matt. So
all right. Well, this felt a lot more like early season Saints, where we're doing some coulda, woulda, shouldas at the end, and Darren Rizzy has found the magic, and the Saints are finding ways to make plays at the end, and today they didn't.
Yeah, and Rizzy was. I mean, he said it after the game that Carr had somebody open on the last play of the game, and he just got to him a fraction of a second too late. Pass rush got there before Carr could get the ball out of his hands. And they were going to, their whole idea, I know some people were kind of like looking at the way they managed the clock at the end of the game and how much time they're giving themselves in case they don't make it. And I asked Rizzy about that, and he was like, we were playing right there to go score, get a 2-point conversion, and go for the win.
Oh, wow.
So they weren't thinking about the possibilities if they didn't get the game there. They were playing for the game on that drive. But I mean, this is kind of exactly it. They have drives in the first half that end with 3 points or no points because they're shooting themselves in the foot with penalties or they're not executing. And you look at that game. I mean, they pretty well controlled managed the first half, and they only had a 6-point lead to show for it. It's gone immediately on the first drive of the second half. They had opportunities to put that one away, and they just couldn't find them. And that's been the story that we've been talking about pretty consistently throughout this season about this team, which is now 1-4 in one-score games.
Yeah, some of the penalties in the first half really hurt as well. We had the ineligible man downfield on Talifuanga, which takes away a touchdown. Then the low block call on Trevor Penning, and all of a sudden you miss a field goal and get nothing there. It was a 6-0 game at half, but it felt like, oh, man, they left the door open.
Yeah, 100%. 100%, because you knew the Rams were going to get the ball to start the second half, and they probably weren't going to be the team that got shut out in the first half. That was the first time since the Super Bowl, only the second time in the McVay era. He's been coaching here since 2017. They've been shut out in the first half. You knew that wasn't going to be the case throughout the majority of the game. They were going to have to score points to win this one, and they came up empty. And this is, again, the penalties have been an issue for this team. There were an issue down here where it nullified a touchdown, and they ended up getting no points in the drive. It was an issue down here again when Alontae Taylor commits a defensive pass interference that converts a third down for the Rams and allows them to score a go-ahead touchdown. So, those are things that really come back to bite you when you're not doing all the other stuff well. This is a Saints team that's playing really out there on the edge a lot of times. If you're not making the big plays in those situations, and you're instead making the plays that actively hurt you, you see outcomes like today.
How much, in your eyes, the loss of Eric McCoy for the game and then Taysom Hill for those last few plays? I mean, that this offense is already sort of walking on one leg, so to speak, anyway. I mean, they're really limited.
Yeah, I mean, I think it hurt him for sure. The Taysom one for sure. I mean, he didn't have a huge statistical game today, but they were playing him all over the field. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a season high in snaps for him. And he's really important because of that. When you put him on the field, defenses have to pay attention to him, even if he's just going to be a fullback as a lead blocker. So you take him out for the absolute clutch portion of the game. They had a 3rd and short run with AK that got stuffed that set up a 4th and 2. Maybe that's Taysom on that. Maybe he converts on that. Eric McCoy, it hurts, but I actually think they ran the ball pretty well today. Probably the best running game they've had without McCoy in the lineup. Alvin Kamara had over 100 yards. They averaged north of 4 yards per carry. They were pretty solid there today. They just really couldn't convert the important situations. I think 8 of Derek Carr's incompletions came on 3rd downs today. It was a bunch of stuff like that really added up to me.
And then you mentioned the sequence at the end where Carr is hit as he throws. Oh, had some live fire coming in there.
Hey, you all right, Norm? Norm's good.
Norm almost made the fair catch.
Norm is not going on the injury report. Thanks for the heads up, by the way. I appreciate it.
How that did not hit us, a light, or the camera, or Norm, I'm not sure. But we got lucky on that one.
Maybe 2 or 3 people on Twitter would have been really happy if I would have caught it right in the noggin.
Some viral moments.
Yeah.
Speaking of close shaves, you mentioned that sequence at the end where Carr gets hit, had a man open. Boy, if they managed to score there, and you said Darren Rizzy said I was going for 2. Atlanta Falcons lost today. The Bucs ended up winning in overtime, but I mean, all of a sudden, this conversation shifts. You're playing a 2-10 New York Giants team next week. There is a chance if the Saints pull this thing out.
For sure. Yeah, they would have been 5-7 with a good chance to go 6-7 next week. 4 wins in a row. You're feeling really good about yourself. Who knows what happens down the stretch? They would have had I guess make up 2 games on Atlanta, even though they would have only been 1 back in the win-loss standings. But still, it's a lot different sort of hope than now having to make up three games on Atlanta with 5 games to go,
and Tampa.
They at least get the head-to-head against Tampa, but it's a lot tougher ask. If you're now 4-8. Trying to be realistic about a playoff shot. I mean, it's
if you had any margin for error, it is now gone. I mean, 5-0 is the only way, and even then, you're asking for a lot of help.
This is, by the way, I looked this up today. This is the 3rd consecutive year that we've gotten through Week 13, and there's not a single NFC South team with a winning record.
Amazing. Just all keeping each other in it. Assuming the playoffs are not an option, though, what are you looking for out of this last month?
I'm looking for the team to keep playing. Look, even though they lost today, they played a tough game today, right? They played those guys hard. The Rams are a good football team. They've won, I guess it's 5 out of the last 7 now, right?
Yeah, and when healthy, their record's a lot better than.
We saw they have a lot of really good football players. Puka Nacua, he showed today, he's a star for a reason. Kyron Williams, a really good football player. They got some good young pass rushers on that team. Like they played this team tight. And I think they played in the last 3 weeks. We've seen a different version of the Saints team than the one clearly the one that we saw lose 7 straight under Dennis Allen. I think they got to keep beating the teams they should beat. They got to beat the Giants. They got to beat the Raiders. They got to show some fight against the Commanders and the Packers, and go beat a team. Like show that you were a team that is not just completely tanking, and that it's not just time to just blow everything up. That might be coming anyways, but I think they've got to. I think they've got to continue to show some of this fight that they've shown in the last couple weeks. So look, the Rams scored 21 points in the second half today. I think we've seen. It wouldn't have surprised me if we saw this team a couple of months ago, or a month ago or so, wilt and lose by 10 or 15 points or whatever. They erased one fourth quarter deficit, and they were well on their way to erasing a second one. They showed some fight. That's what I want to keep seeing out of the team.
All right, he's Luke Johnson, beat writer for the Times-Picayune. The Saints lose this one 21-14. Jeff Duncan's wandered off. He's like all the way over at the 50 or something. I don't know. I don't even know where he went. He's talking right there on the sideline. You know what? We're going to take a break. We'll take a break here on the Saints Insider Postgame Show, and when we come back, we will have NOLA.com columnist Jeff Duncan.
Supposedly.
If I have to go drag him here myself, we will have him right after this message from Tulane Doctors.
At Tulane Doctors, we know your health can't wait.
So we made booking appointments easier than ever.
Just dial 988-5000 to book with any physician, any specialty.
Whether at East Jefferson General Hospital or one of our other locations.
Because your health is our top priority.
And because navigating healthcare should be simple,
Personal.
Accessible.
When you see the shield, you'll know.
The future of medicine is here.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
All right, back on the Saints Insider Postgame Show. Zach Ewing with Luke Johnson. Jeff Duncan is actually doing work, so we're going to let it slide.
He's a renegade who's reporting.
Yeah, we're going to let him find out what's going on. He may be getting injury updates. I don't know. Speaking of which, Taysom Hill, not a good situation. Carted off.
That doesn't look good. I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but just like the way everybody was talking about him, it doesn't sound good. It wouldn't surprise me if we get some bad news on him. I think probably the same for Nick Saldiveri.
When the cart comes out and it's December, there's not a lot of time left for you to come back.
Yeah. So those two are the most concerning for me, hands down. Tyron, clearly, he hurt his shoulder when he tackled Kyron Williams. You saw it just kind of hanging after the play.
They announced that as a knee injury. The Taysom over the loudspeaker, but
Taysom and Saldiveri were both announced.
Knee Taysom injuries. Was knee. Okay.
Yeah.
You're talking about Tyron.
Tyron was a shoulder, and very next play after he goes out, they go deep shot over the middle, targeting his replacement, go for 46 yards. So Tyron is the one who I think has best chance of coming back quickly here, just based on post-game vibes. But he's obviously an important player for them too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you still want to win games. I know people are going to talk draft position and all that sort of thing, but you still want to try to win some of these games. To that end, I would assume that we're going to get Kendry Miller back next week from IR. He's eligible to come off. They talked about him he didn't even necessarily need to go on IR. So he's he's an example of a young player that I think we may see some of these guys get some run in the last.
Yeah, I
5
think so.
games.
I think Kendra Miller and Bub Means are both eligible to come off next week. We'll see if both of them are ready, but those are two guys who I imagine will get a lot of run. It wouldn't surprise me if they signed Kevin Austin to the active roster next. In fact, it would shock me if they didn't.
He had a good game.
He had a good game today. He's I think a promising young player. He's built right. He works hard. He's clearly capable out here. So I would expect him to get signed to the active roster, get a lot of run, and see what these young guys can do while you try to go out and win games. Because there's a little bit of both here. Like they have talked about how they still think the division is in play, but as we've said, very, very, very small chance of that happening. So you gotta compete for it while also seeing what these guys can do for your future.
Yeah, I mean, as long as there's a chance on paper, they're going to keep chasing it. That's the way professional teams act, and I wouldn't expect the Saints to act any differently. Get your opinion on how Derek Carr played today, because his final numbers, and I'm pulling them up right now, 24-37 for 184 yards and a touchdown. Just yards per attempt, not very high. I mean, that's like less than 5. It's about 5 yards per attempt. But you're talking about a quarterback playing without his top 2 receivers, with a makeshift offensive line. He didn't have a lot of time to throw. So how do you grade his performance?
Yeah, I think it's just okay. Which is like, if you look at the 5 losses that he's been a part of this year, it's just okay.
Yeah.
There was a couple of really good throws. The one to Juwan Johnson that happened right over here. A deep shot down the sideline, looked like there's some early contact, but he put that thing right on the money on the 3rd down throw. That one maybe should have been a completion. There was 2 drops by Alvin Kamara that, were very good throws. One of them, another one on 3rd down where Alvin maybe could have had a play at the sticks there, and he obviously dropped the pass and didn't get it. I think his numbers could have been better if for those plays, but then you gotta look at the clutch moment there. 3rd down, he did take a long time to make that throw.
He did,
and for his part, like he shouldered the blame afterwards. He fell on the sword and he said, "I got to be better. I got to make the play." And he does. I mean, they're paying him $40 million a year to do that exact sort of thing. And as we talked about on the pod this week, we still haven't seen him put together one of those game-winning 4th quarter drives here. That's what they brought him in to do. And
he was this close to one today, possibly.
You talk about like the nice throws that didn't come in, but there's also the plays that he needs to make at the back end. And we've seen when he plays really, really well in games this year, the Saints have won. And when he's played just okay or bad, they've lost. So he's obviously crucially important to what they do.
No doubt. All right, Saints are 4-8. That's we do have Jeff Duncan now, so we're going to let Luke make the handoff and get himself back to work. Jeff Duncan, Times-Picayune, NOLA.com, columnist. Your overall thoughts on this one? Saints fall 21-14 and drop to 4-8.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. I picked the Saints, and I know you're going to.
I can't believe you picked the Saints and they didn't win. That's never happened before.
And in the press box, I was feeling so good about the pick. I started boasting to Luke and Matt Paris, and immediately the Saints fell back into their old losing ways. And look, it was to me, the difference in the game, second half, Saints really kind of got dominated in the second half. I think there were some adjustments made. And the Saints are just so hamstrung on offense right now. They really don't have much of a passing game. They can hit a play here or there to MVS, but other than that, it really is just a limited offense. And they're just going to struggle to beat decent teams right now without getting some takeaways or things like that. They really have to have a lot of things go their way. And today they didn't really get a lot of that. Once the Rams started running the ball on the Saints, I thought the run defense was really weak again today. Once Sean McVay figured out they could run the ball and stop trying to just pass right and left, I thought that kind of opened up the Rams offense. And it's a good example, Zach, of another game where they were in it to the very end, couldn't finish. And that's been Rizzy's, kind of mantra the whole time. We're going to learn how to finish. And today when they stepped up in class against a better team, they couldn't finish the game.
Yeah, still very close, but that 4th and 3, Carr's hit as he throws, and it falls incomplete there in the final minutes. I actually think Rizzy came in with the right game here, and the Saints did, is because of what you talk about. Everything is difficult on offense. There aren't going to be a ton of explosive plays, even against a Rams defense that is not anywhere near the top of the league. They came out to possess the ball, and they did. 13 minutes and 58 seconds in the first quarter, still well over half of the time of possession in the first half. But the problem is you only come away with a 6-0 lead at halftime. You have to make that pay off. If you're up, as I was talking to Jim about, if you're up 14-0, even 10-0 at that point at halftime, it's a different game in the second half. The Rams are more in chase mode, and that's where some of the red zone failures really hurt you.
Yeah, and look, I like at the end they said they were going to go for 2, go for the win. That's classic Darren Rizzy. He's going to be aggressive. So they had the right approach there at the end. I like that mindset. But I think it was too little too late. In other words, they kind of squandered the early going when they were kind of dominating the first quarter. First half, Zach, they ran 40 plays.
Yeah,
and that's
crazy.
A lot of plays to come up with, 6 points? I mean, you got to do more damage there. Get in the red zone, you got to score. And that's where it gets back to what we're talking about. They're so limited offensively right now. And then once you lost Taysom Hill at the end, I mean, that's another big
You
play.
think you couldn't use that guy on 3rd and 4 and 4th and 3 at the end there?
Yeah, then it becomes an easy, 2 downs.
Yep.
Let's get 4 yards. Without him, you got no Olave, no Rashid. And then, look, there's no McCoy. You lose Saldivari. You're down 2 offensive linemen. You're pretty limited offensively. So they were smart to think about going for 2 and sneak out of there with a win. The Falcons have already lost, so you're thinking, hey, if we can just somehow scratch out a win here. We're 1 game back. We got momentum, 3 wins. So really opportunity lost. And now you got 5 games left. You're still 2 games back. If you're even thinking about trying to make hay in the playoffs, it's almost insurmountable at this point. There's 0 margin for error.
You have to go 5-0, and you have to get a lot of help.
Right.
Yeah.
And this team I don't think is nearly good enough or talented enough to do that. We've seen when they've played decent teams, and I don't think the Rams are a great team by any means, but they just have a little more balance than the Saints right now. And the Saints, 4 of their 4 wins, 3 of them have come against 3 of the worst teams in the NFL. So I think that tells you a lot about where this team's at. And you can kind of fool yourself into thinking, oh, we're right there, 5 games, 1-score games. Most of the games in the league are like that. And the good teams know how to win those close games, and this team just isn't there yet.
And speaking of worst teams in the league, they face another one next week in the New York Giants. This last month of the season, and again, there's a 1% chance or whatever that they could come back and get in this division race. But barring that, this is going to be the first extended stretch in quite some time where the Saints really have nothing tangible to play for. How does that affect Darren Rizzy? How does that affect some of the veteran players in this team? How do you think they approach that situation?
Well, if I'm running the team, and Darren Rizzy's coaching for a full-time job, so I think he's going to have a totally different mindset. He's going to want to win every game, as he should. You got veteran players. I mean, Cam Jordan in there, very upset because he knows his clock is ticking on his career. Mm-hmm. So you got to think about this team, players like Tyrann Mathieu, just standing over here right now. Those guys want to win. They want to still try to get in the playoffs. If it is just 1% chance, the fact is these 2 teams ahead of them are not very good. So anything can happen. So I think the mindset has to be continue to try and get that 1%. But front office-wise, up high, they've got to start looking at some of these younger players and find out what they have. And what I mean by that is Kendre Miller is going to come off IR soon. They've got to find out what they have in Kendre Miller. Is he a potential long-term answer at running back beyond Alvin Kamara? Things like that have to be answered within the course of trying to win these games. You're not going to throw the game and put Spencer Rattler out there at quarterback over Derek Carr. I'm not saying do that, but within the context of trying to win the game, they've got to start looking at some of these younger players. Kool-Aid McKinstry is getting a great eval right now. They're going to have a good look at him, but maybe some of the younger players, Jalen Ford, some of these guys that we haven't seen, mm-hmm. Let's see them work into the lineup.
All right, he's Jeff Duncan, Times-Picayune columnist. We're going to let him make the handoff to Rod Walker here. And with that, we will wrap things up on the Saints Insider Postgame Show. Thank you, Jeff. And here's Rod. Again, with the 3 o'clock game deadlines get a little crazy around here. Rod just finished his column. Rod, how did you sum this one up in your column?
I just kind of talked about how I thought this was one of those games that it would have been a signature win for Rizzy. On the podcast this week, I talked about how Derek Carr needed that signature drive. There was a chance for him to get that.
Right there, yeah.
And both of them came up short. So, I mean, that kind of summed it up for me.
Darren Rizzy said in the postgame, Luke and Jeff tell us that they were planning on going for 2. Had they scored on that drive, and go for the win, go for the jugular. That's sort of the attitude of Darren Rizzy. And they talked about, hey, this week 1-0 all week long and all week long. Coming up short. So same question I asked Jeff, how do you approach this last month? I mean, given the fact that, yes, there's still this tiny chance you could get back in the NFC South race, but assuming that doesn't happen, how do you evaluate young players and Darren Rizzy while also still sort of trying to fight for wins?
I think as far as Rizzy, I mean, we've seen him since he took this job over. He's going to do everything he can to try to win as many of these games as he can. I don't think he's going to use it too much. I mean, he'll evaluate younger guys, but they're going to be out to win these games, and they have the kind of team that, I mean, you think they can, probably try to piece together some wins. But, I mean, it is a situation where, you're in a game, they go to New York next week, and they fall behind 14-0. Like, I don't know if this team's going to be fighting to get back into a game. I just don't know if there's enough to play for them to be like that right now.
Yeah, and obviously Taysom Hill, injury looks serious. I would certainly not expect him back next week, if at all, this season. Eric McCoy, we don't know about, but, I mean, there's some injury problems here. And to that end, the offense, just had to fight tooth and nail for every yard today. It seemed like nothing came easy, and you saw that on that final drive. They took up 4 minutes off the clock to get inside the 10 and just were trying to get 3 yards here, 1 yard here, and finally couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's almost kind of, not that you want to see a guy get hurt, but a guy like Taysom fighting for it on a fourth and whatever it was, fourth and two. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of Taysom Hill. I mean, he's going to give you everything he has, and they use the cliche about leaving it all on the field, and that's kind of what he did on that play. And they just were, if they have Taysom for that last stretch, who knows? I mean, 4th and 3, you kind of like.
You'd like
Taysom.
To have him on the field.
Like to have him on the field, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, offensively, they just didn't get a lot going today. I thought the defense actually held up pretty good. We were talking about those Rams receivers. I mean, I thought
they were okay, but they certainly didn't win the game for the Rams.
It wasn't like last year when they just torched the Rams, and you hold the Rams to 0 points in the first half. I mean, you got to like your chances, but they just didn't do enough in that second half, and the Rams kind of started getting some stuff going. So
yeah,
that was enough.
Puka Nacua, 5 catches for 56 yards in the touchdown. Cooper Kupp only 3 catches for 17 yards. Those guys had 14 targets, only caught 8 passes.
Yeah,
so they really disrupted him.
Yeah, if you told me that before the game, I said, okay, the Saints have won their 3rd straight game under Rizzy. You would think that would be enough, but it wasn't.
And on top of that, Alvin Kamara running for 112 yards. Saints didn't turn the ball over. I mean, those are things that help. But as we've talked about on this show, the things that hurt, you can't come away from that first quarter as dominant as you played in possession football with only the 3-0 lead, then missing the field goal on the first play. The second quarter, and just needed to get more out of that.
Yeah, you needed to. Against a team like the Rams, you probably need to score touchdowns twice. I mean, you need to probably be up 14-0 if you get down, and they just weren't able to do it. And at that point, I kind of thought, I said, I don't know if they did enough. And you kind of thought, you knew the Rams were going to probably get it going eventually, and in the second half they did.
Yeah, and another thing I've mentioned before, Saints, they do put together a nice drive, get the touchdown pass from Carr to MVS, and the 2-point conversion to tie the game, 14-14. Very next play is a kickoff return. Rams get the ball all the way out to their own 44. 2 plays later, they're inside the 35. I mean, it was like they couldn't quite turn the corner momentum-wise like they have these past couple of games.
Yeah, and that's kind of been the story. When you go back to that 7-game losing streak, especially those first 2 losses to the Eagles and Falcons, I mean, that's kind of what it was. I mean, they were right there, but just not quite good enough. And I mean, they're 4-8, and they're 4-8 for a reason. That's why they're 4-8.
That's right. Okay, so the Saints are 4-8. They lose 21-14 to the LA Rams. We're going to wrap things up there on the Saints Insider Postgame Show. He's Rod Walker. Our thanks also to Luke Johnson and Jeff Duncan. You can read all their work on NOLA.com/Saints, as well as Matt Paris, who couldn't join us today because of deadline writing. Norman Bell's our producer. Spencer Urquhart is handling the comments and helping with the production as well. So our thanks to him. And we will see you on the Saints Insider podcast on Wednesday. Join us then. Until then, our thanks to Tulane Doctors, our sponsor, and our thanks to you here on the Saints Insider Postgame Show.